From the very beginning of a man's life, society quietly fills his mind with carefully built lies. It tells him that if he just makes enough money, becomes good-looking, builds a successful life, then women will automatically be drawn to him, like moths to a bright flame. And because men desperately want answers, they believe it. This lie is easy to accept because it gives them something simple to chase, clear goals, steps they can follow, things they can measure. They believe if they check all the boxes, they'll finally be chosen. But behind this comforting promise hides a much colder and harder truth. The real world doesn't follow these rules. The real world doesn't reward effort alone. Instead, it operates on something far more powerful and much older, something built into our instincts. It's not fairness, it's not logic. It's raw, natural power. A force that exists deep within human nature, where emotions, dominance, and unspoken energy decide everything, while most men stay blind to it, trapped in the lies they were taught. Every man who has ever stood in confusion, watching the woman he deeply desired drift away despite him doing everything by the book, saying the right words, showing consistent kindness, being patient and respectful, has unknowingly come face to face with a cruel truth that society rarely speaks of. Women are not captured by carefully counted acts of politeness or perfectly timed compliments, as if affection can be earned like rewards on a checklist. They are not moved by scheduled messages, flowers delivered on anniversaries, or rehearsed romantic scripts designed to impress. Their desire responds to something far deeper, something far older than any rule society has ever written. It is a force that predates culture, laws, and etiquette, a silent pull rooted in biology and instinct, operating far beneath conscious thought. It is the invisible energy a man carries within him, the unspoken dominance and confidence that radiates without him needing to say a word. She doesn't sit and analyze whether he deserves her affection. Instead, something inside her reacts automatically, pulling her toward him or pushing her away, long before her mind even understands why. This reaction is not a choice she carefully makes. It's a powerful instinct that takes control without asking for permission, leaving logic behind like a forgotten passenger. Philosophers like Machiavelli, or as I prefer to call him, the master of raw and unapologetic human nature, saw what most people still refuse to see. He peeled away the comforting lies and exposed the uncomfortable truth that power, not fairness or good intentions, governs the way relationships truly work. Machiavelli understood that beneath the surface of polite society, humans instinctively submit to invisible hierarchies that have nothing to do with kindness or moral virtue. Women, just like all people, respond to these hidden power structures, even if they're not consciously aware of it. And within these structures, it is never the man who pleads for attention or strives endlessly to prove his worth that rises to the top. Instead, it is the man who carries himself with quiet authority, whose very presence radiates a kind of silent dominance that makes others, including women, feel his power without him ever needing to ask for recognition. His strength doesn't come from trying to be chosen, but from living in such a way that the world seems to lean in his direction naturally, as if reality itself adjusts to accommodate him. Machiavelli knew that true power is not earned through acts of desperation, but projected effortlessly by those who no longer need to ask for permission to exist. You see, society carefully feeds men a narrative crafted to strip them of their natural strength, a story polished to sound noble but designed to disarm. It teaches them that if they simply become more accommodating, always attentive, constantly available, and endlessly generous, they will eventually win loyalty and love in return. But these are not pathways to power. They are carefully placed traps meant to weaken the spirit of those too blind to see. These teachings chain men to a cycle of giving while quietly draining them of authority. They unknowingly surrender their dignity in hopes of earning affection that cannot be bought with sacrifice alone. Men do not stumble in romance because they are lazy, unworthy, or uncommitted. They fall because they have accepted a false script, one that runs directly against the silent laws that govern true attraction and dominance. By living in these illusions, they ignore the real forces at work beneath the surface, the ancient undercurrents of power, energy, an unspoken influence that dictate who holds value and who merely hopes for it. The more they pour into this lie, the further they drift from the source of the very power they seek. A man who enters the arena of desire seeking fairness has already surrendered his position without even realizing it. He approaches a battlefield with the wrong set of weapons, misreading the rules that silently govern human attraction. This isn't a transaction where love is exchanged for good behavior or noble actions. This isn't about ticking boxes or stacking up acts of kindness in hopes of receiving affection in return. What truly stirs desire is far more primitive, far more visceral. It is about creating an environment of dominance and silent authority that no amount of practice or memorized lines can imitate. The moment a man begins to seek her approval, to chase validation, to subtly ask for permission to be chosen, he has already placed himself beneath her in the hierarchy, and she senses that imbalance immediately, even if she cannot explain it. Her choice is not governed by the list of things he's achieved or the effort he's displayed. It's driven by whether his presence carries that unspoken energy, that force that makes her feel something powerful and uncontrollable. It's not about making her feel lesser in a degrading sense, but rather creating a magnetic pull that leaves her breathless, humbled, and irresistibly drawn toward him, unable to fully understand why. You can follow every single rule that society has carefully laid out for you, buy her flowers on every special occasion, respond instantly to every message she sends, offer her endless streams of perfectly timed compliments, and craft each romantic gesture with precision as though you're following a foolproof formula. And yet, despite doing everything by the book, you may still watch helplessly as she slowly slips away, her attention drawn toward a man who completely disregards all of these carefully scripted rituals. Why does this happen? Because her desire was never fueled by these rehearsed performances. Her instincts respond not to the checklist of polite behaviors, but to something far more ancient and uncontrollable, the aura of natural dominance that radiates from a man who does not need to prove his worth. This energy is not something that can be mimicked or created through forced effort. It flows effortlessly from a man who carries himself with inner certainty. She is not captivated by the man who performs out of fear of losing her, but by the man who exists as though he already holds the upper hand, the one who doesn't need her approval to feel complete. It is this silent, unshakable energy that triggers her deepest instincts, pulling her toward him without her fully understanding why. True power never lowers itself to ask for permission to exist, it simply is. It radiates from within and commands recognition without needing to announce its presence. The man who embodies this form of power never has to chase attention or demand acknowledgement. Instead, attention flows naturally toward him, drawn by the gravitational pull of his silent authority. Even in his stillness, there's a heavy presence, a kind of energy that fills the space around him without a single word being spoken. His gaze holds steady, never darting nervously, never seeking approval, but rather observing the world with calm, unshaken confidence. In that calm, something begins to stir within her, the seed of uncertainty takes root. She finds herself asking questions she cannot answer. Does he truly desire me? Or am I just one among many drawn to his world? Is he thinking of me, or is his mind elsewhere? This mystery, this quiet ambiguity, becomes the very fuel that ignites her obsession. As Machiavelli once stated, it is better to be feared than loved. Yet in matters of desire, this principle takes on a subtler, more psychological form. It is far more powerful to remain slightly out of reach than to be fully conquered. The moment she believes she possesses you entirely, the spark of longing begins to fade. Desire thrives in the unknown, in the questions that linger, in the boundaries that remain firm, and in the quiet confidence you carry when you no longer need her approval to validate your worth. The weak man, blinded by desperation, clings to the false belief that more effort will somehow reverse rejection and reignite desire. He convinces himself that if he just sends one more message, offers one more apology, or makes one more grand gesture, she will return to him. But with every unnecessary text, with every anxious explanation, and with every attempt to seek her favor, he unknowingly strips himself of his power, shrinking his presence in her eyes. His actions reveal not confidence, but fear, a fear of losing her, a fear of being alone, a fear of not being enough. And that fear is repulsive to her instincts. The strong man, however, operates from an entirely different foundation. He understands that his greatest weapon is not in how much he can do to win her back, but in his complete willingness to walk away when his value is questioned. He knows that true power never begs or negotiates. It creates an atmosphere where others instinctively adjust themselves to him. Even when she tests him, and she will test him, often in subtle ways, the powerful man remains steady, unmoved by the storm. She may withdraw her attention to provoke insecurity, flirt with others to stir jealousy, or push his boundaries to see if he will break. These actions are not random, they are instinctive probes, designed either consciously or unconsciously, to measure the depth of his strength. The man who responds with panic, who scrambles to explain himself, who desperately tries to calm her doubts, fails the test the moment he reacts. But the man who remains still, who refuses to chase, who allows her to wrestle with her own emotions without trying to control them, preserves his position at the top. His silence becomes his shield, his calmness becomes his throne, and in that unshakable state, he forces her to confront her own uncertainty, which only deepens her desire. Power thrives precisely where fear of loss no longer holds any weight. The man who can face the possibility of losing her without losing his own sense of self rises above the emotional games that ensnare weaker men. This is not mere detachment, it is a higher form of mastery, the kind of inner dominion that ancient philosophers, especially the Stoics, taught as the essence of true freedom. According to this wisdom, no external force, not her affection, her attention, or even her absence, has the authority to disturb your inner peace. When your self-worth exists independently of her validation, you step into a realm of untouchability that few ever reach. And paradoxically, it is within this untouchability that her desire for you begins to swell. You see, desire is not fueled by certainty or security, it feeds off mystery, unpredictability, and unanswered questions. The more fully you reveal yourself, your emotions, your thoughts, your daily availability, the more predictable you become. And with predictability comes a slow erosion of passion, because what is fully known loses its grip on the imagination. Her instincts don't crave constant reassurance, they hunger for the chase, for the slow unraveling of your depths, for the sense that there is always something more beneath the surface she has yet to fully grasp. It is the fragments, the glimpses, the carefully maintained distance that stir her curiosity and pull her deeper. The unknown draws her in far more powerfully than any string of well-crafted promises ever could. She desires the man who remains just beyond her complete understanding, the one whose essence she is endlessly chasing but never fully captures. Machiavelli grasped this truth with chilling precision. Real power is not about loud declarations or desperate attempts to be understood. It thrives in the shadows of controlled ambiguity. Just as a ruler becomes exposed the moment he is fully predictable to his people, a man loses his influence the instant he reveals everything about himself. When you strip away all your mystery, when your emotions are laid bare, your intentions made obvious, your heart placed recklessly on display, you surrender the very leverage that once drew her in. She must never be entirely certain of her place in your world. That uncertainty isn't cruelty. It's the fuel that keeps her curiosity alive and her desire burning. It's the unanswered question that lingers in her chest long after you've left the room. A man who possesses true status never needs to convince anyone of it, he embodies it. It lives in his calm, in the deliberate way he moves, in the silence he allows before he speaks. The room seems to shift around him, not because of anything he says, but because of the gravity he carries. Men give way. Women glance twice. The energy bends subtly, but unmistakably, in his favor. This is the kind of presence that can't be faked or fabricated. It's cultivated in solitude and sharpened through mastery. She feels it long before she logically understands it. Her instincts register the hierarchy long before her thoughts catch up. It's not your words that tell her who you are, it's how the world reflects you back to her. If others treat you with reverence, If your presence causes ripples without effort, she will feel it in her body. And that feeling, primal, unconscious, magnetic, is the real language of attraction. And understand this, status is never something you declare for yourself, it is a silent judgment rendered by the world around you. The moment you find yourself needing to announce your worth, to convince others of your value, you reveal its absence. True status radiates from within, demanding no explanation, requiring no defense. It's recognized instinctively, felt before it is even consciously acknowledged. When a man carries himself with unshakable inner stability, with the quiet certainty of someone who knows who he is, respect follows as a natural consequence. People are drawn to him like celestial bodies pulled into orbit by an unseen gravitational force, and women, above all, sense this pull at a level they cannot fully explain. In the intricate game of desire, you either stand at the center as the force that shapes the dynamic, or you vanish into irrelevance as just another option easily dismissed. The man who grasps this no longer expends his energy chasing validation or seeking approval from anyone, especially not from women. Instead, he becomes the architect of his own standards, the gatekeeper of his own world. He no longer whispers, "Does she want me?" but raises a far more sovereign question, "Is she even qualified to stand beside me?" And in the paradox that governs human nature, it is precisely when he releases the need for her that her desire for him surges uncontrollably. The absence of need creates a vacuum, and into that vacuum rushes her longing, compelled by forces she cannot resist or fully comprehend. This is precisely why the most powerful men remain unshaken amidst the storms that easily break weaker men. When the world around them collapses into emotional chaos, when jealousy stirs, when arguments flare, when the threat of loss hovers, they remain perfectly still, like immovable pillars standing firm in a sea of uncertainty. While others scramble, plead, or crumble under pressure, these men embody an unyielding calm, a silence that radiates an undeniable strength. They know that real power is never found in material wealth, public recognition, or the empty applause of others, but in the unwavering certainty of who they are at their core. Rejection does not disturb their inner peace, loss does not shake their sense of self, their value is not some fragile possession that can be taken from them, it is deeply rooted in their very existence, untouchable and complete. This solid, unbreakable steadiness pulls women toward them with a magnetic force she cannot comprehend or resist. She may not understand it through conscious thought, but her body responds instantly and involuntarily. Before her mind has time to analyze or process, her biology reacts, her pulse quickens, her breathing becomes shallow, her pupils dilate, her skin warms, every reaction sparked by an ancient instinct recognizing dominance and strength. This force cannot be negotiated through charming words or elaborate displays, it is not something you can argue your way into. Desire of this magnitude is awakened in the oldest, most primitive parts of her mind where reasoning has no influence. Once this instinct takes hold, once the flame is lit within her, no amount of talking is necessary. The bond becomes chemical, automatic, undeniable, a gravitational pull that commands her attention whether she chooses it or not. Machiavelli understood that those who possess true power never beg for loyalty, they do not negotiate for allegiance, they do not attempt to win over their subjects with endless concessions. People either submit immediately or they rebel without hesitation. This same unbending rule governs the mysterious realm of attraction. If she does not feel the pull from the very beginning, no amount of clever persuasion, no number of rehearsed compliments, and no series of grand romantic gestures will ever ignite what was not already present. Attraction is either born instantly or it never truly exists. Your power does not arise from clever lines, or from impressive gifts, or from artificial charm, it radiates through your being, through your physical presence, through the subtle language of your body. It is revealed in the way you stand firm, the way you draw each breath slowly and deliberately, the way your voice carries with calm authority. You do not project neediness, you embody certainty, you give her no choice but to confront her own emotions while you remain untouched. As she searches for validation from you, as she tries to read your intentions, As she feels the unsettling uncertainty you quietly create, you shift the balance entirely. She becomes the one who yearns, who wonders, who chases, while you remain the unshakable prize she cannot easily possess. The weak man, in his desperation, fills every silence with nervous words, forced laughter, and endless chatter, hoping that his performance will win her over. Yet, every word, every attempt to impress, only exposes the insecurity he tries so hard to hide. His need for approval bleeds through, visible even in the smallest gestures. Machiavelli cautioned against this exact behavior, for those who strive tirelessly to please are often despised, not admired, because they expose their dependence on others for validation. True power is never found in the performance, but in the stillness, in the unspoken certainty that requires no audience, no applause, no reassurance. The most profound transformation occurs when you no longer engage in the exhausting pursuit for approval, not from women, not from peers, not from the world. The moment you step away from the endless competition for acceptance, you rise above the crowds who remain trapped, enslaved by the shifting opinions of others. You become the standard, the summit others must strive to reach. Women detect this shift instantly, sensing the absence of need as both mysterious and irresistibly compelling. Your detachment creates a powerful gravitational pull, one that draws them in without any effort on your part. In this timeless philosophical truth rests the greatest paradox of power, that it is not seized through grasping but through release. The man who walks his path alone, deeply rooted in his own self-worth, unshaken by loss, indifferent to approval, becomes a rarity in a world full of desperate seekers, and in that rare self-possession, he becomes the most sought after. The man who no longer seeks validation no longer plays by the rules of others, he becomes the very author of the game itself, bending reality to his will while others scramble to catch up.